Hello, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and we're going to continue, I think, my Hearts of Iron 3 U.S.A. World War II Black Ice 11.2 playthrough here. Now, I think because I don't know. Gamer's pissed. I'm just... how much do they fuck up things? The Black Ice team, and I'm sorry for hurt feelings, but I'm pissed right now. Because maybe you should never look under the hood. Maybe you should never check things out. I know why I was having such fuel problems. Now, why do I have such fuel up here now? Because I cheated all that fuel and I put 99.99 fuel up there. And if you want to know how to do it, you need to find out the province number here and just put it in your capital. I just dumped it in the capital. I don't really think that's cheating here. I mean, I cheated it in because where, at least for the United States, where they had a fuel problem, and they did have some fuel problems, it was out here at the tip of the spear. So meaning, to me, cheating would be something like, oh, well, let me go in here and dump a bunch of fuel at the frontline province. That would be cheating, kind of thing. Just because the U.S. has fuel. And here is they fucked this up. I mean, I'm serious. They fucked this up. And yes, I know read the introduction helped. They probably went in and talked about petroleum refineries. We should have built a bunch of petroleum refineries. Because it is a buildable province, or buildable building. And it's a universal, where the oil building here modifies local oil, here, because there's oil produced in this province. It modifies this number. It doesn't modify the universal number. This modifies universal number. Okay. We should have built a bunch of refineries. This is why here, and this is not just Gamer, hey, you jumped into this, you should have read the introduction, how to plays, and I'm not going to argue that I shouldn't, and I haven't even looked in there, and it very well may be there, and it's probably there, and it may not be, but I'm going to presume that they did that job and say, hey, remember, you need to build refineries to increase your conversion from oil to fuel. Okay, that's on me. This the fuck is on them. This is what's pissing me off. 9 ICs. Okay. 9 ICs. Look at that date. January 1945. So approximately a year. Where the hell are we going to get this many ICs? And you can talk about, well, Gamer, you shouldn't have been building so much Navy early on. You should have been building up your ICs. No, that wouldn't have done it. Okay, that would not have done it. And I don't know if I need this many petroleum refineries. I don't know if I need twice as many or half as many or a quarter or 4 times as many. I don't know what I need. It's going to take, 9 months or whatever here, or 10 months to build these out. But it's going to be 10 ICs, 9 ICs, but okay, per building. Take that up. And no, we shouldn't be building them in March 44. We should have been building them whenever. I don't know if this is fucking up the AI. And I have not gone in and looked. I mean, how much time am I supposed to spend to go in and look? Is there an event for the AI to spam these in here? To make boss country America dangerous? And they're only, not having that event for player because players are smart enough and should, read the fucking manual. I get it. and know that you need to build them up and go for it. So human, and so you're not just giving it all. Okay, but where the hell are you going to get the ICs? Because realize I just looked it up. From sometime in 41 to sometime in 45, they produced 175 Fletcher class destroyers. The U.S. did. Okay, 175. So they start just a little bit before the U.S. goes to war. And by the time, sometime in 45, they built 175. I don't know their monthly or their concurrent. How many Fletchers they have, building at any one time, and they probably ramp up and then they probably ramp down. And they build other class of frigates, or not frigates, sorry, destroyers too, and a lot of everything else. But look, guys, look. Let's just figure 40 at once to get to 175 over the approximately, get done by, the beginning more or less of 45. So we're talking, sometime late 41, just getting a few going, because, they don't start with 40, they start with like 10 or something. I don't know the exact number they start with, but to get them, because also do the Sumner class and other classes of destroyers. So they get going in slowly before the war starts, as the world is arming up, and and so to get them done by the beginning of 45. So we're talking 40, sometime late 41 through 44. So about 3 years, really. That you're doing it. That, and these will take not quite a year. Okay, look at that. 160 ICs. 160 ICs. Oh, I gotta click all these down. Okay, goody. Okay, let's say if we were to go in for light cruisers. They're building, it's more than 20 Cleveland class cruisers they're building, and I think it's 8 of them get turned over to CVLs. Okay, so, or whatever. So they're building, so like let's say 30. So we're talking 150 ICs just for, and that's 20 months that they're building. That's just basically your Cleveland class and your Independence class, like carriers. We're not. They built other light cruisers with just 5-inch guns, but a lot of them as sort of anti-aircraft. They were also building heavy cruisers. Let's just go 10. I don't know the number of heavy cruisers they were building, but 10. Okay, that's 71. And these are all being built, and because they're putting them into production, in 42, 43. Where are we going to get the ICs for that? And then I don't know exactly which is super battleships, or I don't know, is that the Yamato or something like that? Though that does look like an American. Okay, that looks like a New Jersey class. That looks, I don't know, but okay. Let's, even if we go down to 150 for 33 months, plus all the carriers. What? Let's go 12 carriers, 200 ICs. Where the hell are you going to get all your ICs from? And even if you had built all of the, petroleum refineries earlier, before 41, you're going to have less ICs to build other things. And yes, I know I built, and I was totally good with the idea that I was building. Now they're putting the Helena, which is a light cruiser. The Helena's a light cruiser. Huh? Why is that getting... What? Because the Helena is a follow-on of the Brooklyn class. It's just somewhat more modernized, but the same basic armament. Though, yes, it is the same hull, though I don't know the number. I thought it was CL. And it's the same hull as because now, see, the Brooklyn class, and I forget the heavy cruiser, they're the same hull. Built at the same time. Just the Brooklyns, because they were built for treaty cruisers, the London Naval Treaty, you couldn't have too many heavy cruisers, so the U.S. builds some light cruisers using heavy cruiser hulls in displacement, but put on 15 6-inch guns and hoping to do the job with, spamming out the rounds per volley versus and their 6-inch guns versus the sort of standard or heavy cruiser or whatever you want to call it, the standard CA, as being an 8-inch gun, and there's 9 8-inch guns, and they build some of those too, and they're basically the same hull. I don't know if the armor thickness is different. I don't think it is, but I'm not sure. I don't know everything. Sorry, guys. But so yeah, I don't know. But the New Jersey here. Okay, there could, yeah. So I was perfectly willing, and I expected somewhere in 41 to early 42 to have events that dumped in ICs, or onto the map, and or just modifiers, events that come in, and whether it adds a technology that something you can't, because I do this for Third Reich events because of the motorization levels of the American. This is and I made it before they made all of these cool headquarters, tailored headquarters, core size headquarters, and so it's probably not needed now. And before significant numbers of event given, core and other HQs existed, I have an event that fires that does unresearchable technology that you don't ever see here on the map, but the U.S. gets is something sort of like a motorized HQ, just in speed bonuses. Whatever this might do in fighting, if it's used as a frontline unit, I don't know, but just to have that, just to simulate the U.S. and it's just for the U.S. And there is something for a lesser bonus for Germany, but you pay for it and whatnot. But so you can just have an event that happens that has a modifier to ICs, doubles base level ICs, or something like that. I was expecting an event like that because that would simulate realism. Magic ICs, where do they come from? Well, there were a lot of factories that were idled. There were a lot of factories that were producing at less than full standard capacity. And yes, I do, know that going from, full civilian economy to total mobilization is already in the game, and that is meant to simulate the idea of taking a factory from like an 8-hour workday. 8 to 10 hours was sort of standard at the time, the 8 hours coming in during this time, but 8 to 10 hour workday, and moving at least critical industries to 24/7 workdays, so that they are always going on. And so you already have that to a degree in the game, but it's also to even better limit nations, like specify the nations, because these are all retcons. All of these are backwards. Just how much manufacturing capacity does Philadelphia have? back when you used to do manufacturing in cities, and the immediate surrounding area, how much, well, we don't really know. We're just sort of kind of looking at what, and the way this game, the developers of the original base game do is, well, how many, okay, we want to build all these divisions and cruisers and destroyers. Oh, because also, with Black Ice deciding that destroyers represent a single ship, and so we should have just as many destroyers as America had without any real serious problem, and still produce the magnificent Air Force that, I don't know how many theaters you want to consider the American Air Force, let alone the giveaway Air Force, to give away, because it's sort of lend-lease, to Britain and the Commonwealth. Those are, whether you want to consider those the same or two different type entities, but to give away Air Force to the Soviet Union. But, we have the Air Force, I would sort of separate out the Mediterranean theater from the 8th Air Force or whatever that's bombing from Britain. Because until you really start getting into the occupation of Italy here, all of these guys down here are operating entirely separately, where once you're up here, yes, sometimes the B-17s are, bombing, factories and other, ICs and industrial type targets. Other times they're literally bombing on the front line, or just tactically bombing and trying to destroy railheads to stop, strategic movement of units. So it's, and the fighters that have been dominating the skies, or, well, maybe I'm going to retract that. The fighters that have been reasonably effectively escorting the bombers to their targets and back can't, because I don't know that they really dominate the skies over Germany when they're still back in here. Meaning, I don't think a transport plane flying around here is going to get likely to get shot up by American Air Forces. It's just when those, big bomber groups coming in, they're able to battle the Luftwaffe and get, a lot of aircraft home. And certainly, like on the way home, there is some strafing of ground targets and whatnot, I do believe. But they are eventually, dominating the skies over, Northwest Europe as their ground movement. And so that's one Air Force. Another is sort of the Mediterranean, though there are units being shifted back and forth much more readily than, say, to the Pacific Theater. But even the Pacific Theater, you have the sort of Nimitz's Air Force that eventually sort of is Curtis LeMay coming, well, they fly out of Guam mostly, and though that's Iwo Jima is an emergency landing place, bombing Japan. You also have sort of, if we would call it, MacArthur's Air Force, which includes naval elements too, that are fighting up. And the Solomons is, whatever, we sort of whose theater command, but definitely the sort of MacArthur's push up through here. And then, of course, you have the CBI, China, Burma in India. I don't know how much. I know the transport come flying the hump is the Americans almost exclusively, but they build a whole American Air Force type theater Air Force in China of American pilots flying, and I think they're exclusively American pilots, meaning I don't think there's any British involvement, and there's no real point in, I don't know if they turn over aircraft over to the nationalist Chinese, probably some, I don't know, but mostly Americans flying here that are battling here. So they're doing all that, then plus, like I say, lend-lease aircraft to the Soviet Union, to Britain, to Canada, to Australia, New Zealand, India, they're South Africa are flying American modeled American built and American modeled, or maybe slightly modified for the other countries sometimes having Browning machine guns, the same, 30 caliber machine guns, instead of 30-06 in the American caliber, they're in 303 caliber. Yes, they do some of those, particularly for aircraft. But other minor modifications, either at production time or by the different nations. So, with doing all of that, and all the ground forces and everything else, there's and so they figure out, well, how many ICs to do all of this with the game, and then they somewhat arbitrarily, well, let's put some in Philadelphia, but it's really, the important thing is really more how many ICs does it take to achieve this goal. Okay, well, I don't think, because base ICs here currently is including any that we have currently captured. Now these are then locally modified by occupation policies, obviously, or whatever. So yeah, but still, an IC is an IC, and so the base level ICs is that, and it's more than doubled, but just barely more than doubled by all these modifications through here, and some are obviously deductions. I don't think I could have doubled the number of ICs that were produced, but maybe I could have, to 600. So that would give us, well, double 1,400. Yeah, 1,400 would do it, maybe. But that's about what it would take to really effectively do what they're trying to do, and then figure out all of everything. And so with all of that, but like I say, with I forget, I looked, it's a minor modification for each of these, meaning this one of these petroleum refineries, and it shouldn't, I'm not suggesting it should, doesn't double the conversion rate from oil to fuel. So I don't know how much you need, and I get that, I don't understand this building also. How is this helping the game? How is this helping the game? Is what I want to know. And I would love to, and gamer realism, I thought you were into, yes, I'm into realism. All of these nations, not just some, all of these nations are hard to model, to nearly impossible to accurately model, okay? Because I've looked into this, trust me, I know they're hard to do. It just, Germany, plausible. Let's jump over here. U.S. bombing once they get close enough. To my limited knowledge, though I've watched some documentaries on it, they don't effectively hurt, the bombings do not effectively hurt the oil fields, meaning they don't significantly light the oil wells on fire. They don't significantly damage whether they're the oil wells themselves in the bombings. And I could be wrong about that. I'm not saying I know everything. What they do is damage what we're seeing here, which is the early stages of refining. Because I don't know plausible, whether it's light sweet crude, which is sort of the best. Well, you say best. I say best. Sort of the best type of oil coming out. It needs the less refining, but light sweet crude does not produce very much diesel. You need some of the heavier crudes to, as a percentage of, what when you refine, because the first stage is you're filtering out impurities, things like sulfur that's in the oil itself. So some of this could be, and I don't know exactly how they're refining out things like sulfur, but once you're starting to get it into, things like gasoline or kerosene or other things, is you're boiling it, is you're cooking up the oil, and it separates out naturally at the different ones, and they siphon off at different heat temperatures to get different things out. Some of the heaviest, though you want it rather pure, is like lubricating oil, and then you want then thinner than that would be fuel oil, which is something you would say burn in a lot of homes I know up in the Northeast of America are fuel oiled homes, meaning they have a big tank of oil that's like buried on their property, and they use that for heating instead of electricity, instead of coal or natural gas coming to it. They actually have oil tanks, and so like once a month a truck comes by, and somebody runs out with a hose and hooks it onto the house and fills up the tank. That's fuel oil, and that is basically what's burning in all of the major ships out here. Is not motor torpedo boats. Those would be aviation fuel, actually. Things like destroyers, battleships, they're using fuel oil. Ships that used to be, could be theoretically burning coal, in the sense of generating heat, meaning they're steam turbine engine ships, as opposed to smaller that are like either diesel or like the motor torpedo boats. They're aviation engines that have been marinified and made bigger and whatnot, but they use aviation fuel. So I don't know what the conditions coming out at plausible, but so you get your first stage working on it. The second stage, you very well maybe, I'm sure there were some refining to gasoline out there, but they also, another thing they're bombing is the railway, all the piping that's running around here, and the railway tracks that then you pour the oil into, tanker cars and train cars and take it away, and to other refineries. So that's what they were destroying, to the best of my knowledge, because it wasn't like complete and utter destruction to the oil field. They're interrupting the supply, the supply flow of oil, and depending on how much they wreck this, how hard, long, difficult to replace the damaged equipment is. Okay, so how long does it take to build these tanks, these pipes, these kinds of stuff? So if they have a big pile of unused, fuel or oil refinery, or whatever, spare parts sitting over here. Okay, it takes a few days, maybe a month or so, but it takes a few days to replace it. But hey, it's replaced and going, because you only need so much of this based upon how much oil you're pulling out of the ground. There's no point in having twice the amount of equipment laying around if you can't pull it out of the ground that fast. Well, there would be, of course, if you were going to be bombed, and you disperse it all, and you separate it around a bit, and you put concrete barriers to reduce blast effects, or you bury it all under concrete, build bunkers that build a mountain on top of it of concrete, kind of thing, and whatever. But you don't know. So when you're looking at Germany, get back to the point, and trying to remodel, retcon. Well, I don't know if retcon's the right term, but you're trying to retcon is not the right term. We are trying to not retrofit. Reverse engineer. That's it. When we're trying to reverse engineer, say, Germany's production abilities for a game like this, it's hard to do because, one, how many ships can Germany build? Well, part of what was limiting Germany's shipbuilding was literally steel. We can say that Germany has enough steel. Yeah, they have lots and lots of steel. But even there, even the U.S. still has to make decisions on what to build. With their steel, and it's also quality of steel, because what I'll call junk steel, things that could even be made out of iron, though I don't know that they really were, are things like rebar, that you put in concrete, and you see all the huge amounts of rebar for the sub pens. That doesn't have to be good steel. Just sort of got to be steel that you bend it, you put it in the shape, and then you pour concrete over it to give it, lateral kind of strength to it. So yeah, and so there's all of the the tank traps along the coast, of various types, whether it's the things that look like big jacks, or Belgian gates or whatever. That can just be almost like sort of scrap steel, just sort of junky steel, where your engine, because it whether it's in an aircraft or a tank, because it needs to deal with high heat tolerances, being an engine, it's got to be higher quality steel. Steel from whether it's a rifle barrel or a anti-tank barrel needs to be a high quality of steel because it's dealing with it. The trigger on the gun and the trigger guard for the rifle does not need to be high quality steel. You just build it out of steel, but it can just be low quality steel. So some of it is qualities of steel that is more the limiting factor than do we have just absolute amounts of steel. So, how much can all of these dockyards build, and how much, so we're trying to figure it out. And then how much is damage because of bombing, and how much, is expanded from production. So it's hard to figure all of this out. And so you're never going to get it right. And then, of course, this is they lie. Here. I know I've explained this before. I know this is becoming a rant episode, sorry, but I think we'll just call it that. I do want to make a save because I did some work on this just before starting recording here. As I said, this is all a lie. Because factory here in Kursk, well, I don't know if there's that many factories in Kursk, a little bit. Okay, Stalingrad, the Stalingrad tractor factory or whatever. They're told, your target production of tractors or of tanks or of whatever it is 50 a month. Okay. Well, if they only get enough metal or enough parts, let's say engines, because it's maybe we're not, because the assembly factory, shall we say, it's also manufacturing components but not manufacturing the engines or the gun barrels if they're tanks, and if they're tractors obviously they don't have gun barrels. But if they're manufacturing tanks, okay, they're probably not manufacturing the engines in that same factory. It may be a factory next door, maybe a factory in another city, whatever. The engines are showing, but only 40 engines show up. Well, what's the guy going to do? He has an invoice or a travel voice that says that there's 50 engines here, and he only sees 40. If he starts screaming that that there's only 40 engines, well, the shipping, the train guys, they'll swear that there were 50 engines delivered. So when the NKV comes up knocking, because their invoice said, here's 50 engines, and they saw there's only 40, and they put them on the train, where's the other? Because if the guy at the factory complains that he only gets 40 engines in this delivery, and and everybody else is swearing that there was 50 engines, somebody's created sabotage. This is sabotage. So somebody, now maybe several people, not just the guy who's complaining, but will disappear, whether it's, bullet in the head or off to some gulag or whatever it is. And yeah, maybe it won't be the guy who's complaining, but okay, it's probably not going to be missing 25% of the engines. It might just be 47 engines. Hoping, and he may hope that in the next shipment there'll be 53 engines instead of 50. The numbers will be made up. But all along the chain, they're lying and saying it. And so when the factory ships out, yeah, we shipped out 50 tanks. What are you talking? You didn't receive it. Well, where were the tanks stolen on the way? Who sabotaged the tanks on the way there? Did some general come in and commandeer illegally 3 tanks for his brigade? We know we shipped off. Everybody will sign off and swear that there were 50 tanks delivered. So the whole system is lying to itself. And then, of course, they lie to to the highest authorities. They're lying, and the highest authorities are lying to the rest of the world, for military propaganda reasons against the Germans, say, but also political propaganda reasons against everybody else. They're also their enemies. So, the Soviet Union, for all this stuff, is the land of lies. So you cannot believe anything you read or hear about it. Now, it doesn't mean that they didn't produce a lot of T-34s. They produced a shit ton of T-34s, but don't ever believe the numbers. The numbers are guidelines. The numbers are general figures. Where Germany is very, very precise on its numbers. They accumulate lots and lots of records for their numbers. There's a big confusion about the numbers. Why? Well, a bunch of these cities were firebombed. Records burn up. Oh, end of war? Hey, take all these files, put them over there on that pile, and put some coal on top of it or something, or just light them on fire, because they're running out of gasoline. But and they're burning records like crazy. All kinds of records at all kinds of levels. And so just, the Germans themselves were keeping the records, but whether it's war damage or end of war, let's burn things, records go, disappear. And so, and we still get confusion and whatnot when you're talking about United Kingdom and America and all of that too, but a little more transparency there on this stuff. So, this is aggravating to me. I get the idea of challenges. Like Panzer Corps to the game. You can sort of get bonuses for your general, like either skill bonus or like crossing rivers and whatever are going to be easier. So you click that one off, and you get one sort of click of like worth 2 points, so you could split it into 2 single point things or something. Click on something that benefits you. Okay. Now, if you want another one of those, you can go click something that on the negative side that hurts you. Okay. And so, like one of them might be for challenge missions, no reinforcements in the middle of a mission. So if your units take damage, you can't bring reinforcements, which for a short-term operational mission, if you're really talking about either destroyed equipment or casualty losses, that is quite appropriate. Though, of course, when you're playing Panzer Corps, the AI side, and because it's not 2-player, unfortunately. Or is it? Do they have a 2-player? I don't know. Sorry, because I never played a 2-player. If they do, I'm not sure. But the other side doesn't have that same disadvantage. And if both sides had that disadvantage, so you're using up, your armored company or your infantry company, fine. But if the enemy is also using, or is able to, if they're also using theirs up, fine. If they're able to infinitely reinforce based on their point system, it's not fine. Another like challenge you could do is no air power, on your side. So if the enemy has air up in the air, you won't be able to put your fight. You won't have fighters to shoot it down. You can have anti-aircraft guns, and you'll never be able to bomb enemy positions. They'll be able to bomb yours, but you can't bomb theirs. And so I get challenges, that are sort of, okay, in a particular mission, we could say it might be very realistic that you don't have air cover, but in that sort of game, and if you played it, you sort of know, it's not realistic that your side, you never get any air cover in any missions and the enemy gets air, or the enemy gets, for holding out in victory hexes longer, they get points that can go to replacement of losses, and you can't. So it's unrealistic in that sense. But so I get the idea of challenges to make America challenging. I don't want a challenging America any more than it was historically. I want an America that, represents America. I don't want an America that, makes me work harder than they had to achieve victory. I want to be able to do what they did. Now, and even playing as Germany, I get, and to some degree, agree with Black Ice's some of their modification benefits. And when you set up difficulty and make some of the nations more hard because of the bad AI, because of other bad decisions, to be more forgiving for countries like Britain and America, to give them more ICs so that when you destroy units or they badly handle it, they more easily recover from it. Give them more manpower or whatever. I get that to make up for the bad AI. If you had good AI, if we were looking at how War in the East 2, I presume War in the East 1, because I have played it a little bit. Yes, I have played a little bit of War in the East 1, but not a whole lot. Played more War in the East 2. The AI is pretty good. Now, it's not, it can be a whole front. So the AI is doing pretty good. So you want realism in there, and the AI does well. So if you had a good AI, then I would want all of these nations to be as realistically as possible. But I get the idea that particularly Germany can be a little too easy if you don't give bonuses. And another descriptor, when I played my Japan game a while ago, it was here in Hilo. There is a 2-level base. Well, after I invaded and took out, Honolulu here, the island, the great bulk, basically all of the Pacific Fleet, the American Pacific Fleet, all went over to here to Hilo. And that's its supply levels based upon that, and also repair levels based upon that. And they've actually made these base levels. We can see this will repair 48. I don't think it would repair as much, but because of the lack of supply able to come into here, I don't think this port existed. I'm not sure in that game, but this one did. That all of these ships went out of supply because of the port, and they were not being well repaired, so they got to like zero organization. So I just, with the Japanese Navy, went and parked it out here, and just started doing airstrikes against the Navy and destroyed the great bulk of the American Navy, and then eventually took the rest of the island. But I intentionally did not invade and take this island because, yeah, you know, should I have invaded and take the island, which would have forced, the Navy back to San Diego or someplace like that, and then that gets organized up, and then the American Navy comes charging out. So it's the stupid AI that won't see that, oh, I can't supply, one, and two, I can't repair the damages to this fleet. Let me send it back to somewhere that they can, and then get ready and then try to do a naval invasion or whatever. So when you have that stupid levels of AI, Japan that is able to conquer and hold Hawaii, Japan that is able to conquer Australia, because Japan, and Japan obviously, when we've talked about why it does this for China, in that, takes over China, because if it doesn't, the Japanese AI will continue to prioritize this front, not build naval units, and you could try to force it to, by events that just simply remove effective ICs for a while, equaling to the naval builds. And why island garrison units, things like this, have such a huge weight, unless you do and again, you probably know because you played the game, garrison, that the AI cannot reduce this out. So these are meant to make island garrisons too heavy to move by ships, exactly for Japan, so that Japan, otherwise they would pull these island garrisons off and send them over to somewhere, in China, but they would be all bogged down in China trying to fight in China. Even if you try to do, shall we say, make it hard to supply in China or something, which is part of the thing, and there'll be no forces to come in and take all these other places down. Even if you script, which they do script these invasions and give sort of free Japan free forces to at least the initial invasion, they'll still be all bogged down, and they'll be focusing here. So it makes a Pacific slash sort of India front war laughable. So we get why, at least for the AI, this is done. And with the human against the bad Chinese AI, is why the human can win here as well. And so even if you didn't, all of this, so it's just really hard to do it historically that way. And we can see here that Japan hasn't invaded up here. We've known because they've come in with very large, and I'm pleased that they did do so. I mean, it was troubling in playing against it, but pleased that they were aggressive with invasions. I mean, that's way too big of a defense force for them to take out, but it was, a force sort of like this, of a division or whatever, and to take out these islands. I'm glad that it was being aggressive and doing that, but shouldn't maybe they get a few more divisions and land up here, because they cannot cross the strait so long as that motor torpedo boat is here? And why hasn't the AI moved that big fleet that took out my fleet that was, it was partially from air power that was sitting here way too long, that it destroyed a good portion of the American fleet here? Why don't they come here and take out the motor torpedo boat squadron just by moving in and doing that there, and then coming across? So we can see simplistic situations that the AI is not dealing well with. So I get the idea of giving the AI buffs and whatnot to work with what you have, but I guess if I want a challenging nation to play or something, I'd play Australia, or whatever, if I'm just like looking for Pacific theater, or which I have played, Britain. It's challenging. I was able to hold in Bangkok with British forces here, and this was sort of here in some uber divisions with some uber generals by the end of the game. We're here because it just grinded on by the Japanese attacking, and I was able to hold out here with my British campaign. So instead of holding back here, but Britain was not able to rampage against Japan while fighting the theater. So yeah, if you want a challenging campaign, play something else other than America. Now, why play America? Well, this is the first time I played it, literally in all versions. But why play it? Well, it's to do things like I was trying to do with is to set challenges for myself. Could I hold the Philippines? Could I send down enough? And we lost a couple of divisions that were shattered or whatever and went back to the U.S. or maybe completely gone. Well, he's too far away to really be. You can see some of these units are too far away. But is to, could I hold the Philippines on the one hand? And two, could I hold some of the, Midway and Wake Island and whatnot, and Guam, and push rapidly against Japan while also fighting in the greater European theater. And so that was sort of a challenge for me, and I went with a Navy heavy because of the long, early build because of the long build time for ships, which is very appropriate, very correct. So yeah, and so those are the kind of things that I would look. It's not so much can America win the war in my mind at all. It's can it do something quick? Can it still do real well against, say, Europe and defeat, hold and then defeat Japan earlier, or can we just sort of generally hold sacrifice, let put minimum forces in the Philippines, but can we hold Australia? Can we hold Hawaii? Can we hold some of the main theaters with America and crush Germany by 44 or something, a year earlier, or some such thing like that? That's where I would find challenges with America. But right now we're sort of where we should be in 42 here, because by the end of 42 they've taken all of North Africa, I believe. Oh boy, I'm not great on dates. It's pretty quick here. Maybe it's into early 43. That could be. June 44 they take Rome. So, but, it's taking out Sicily, moving up here, months of fighting here. So, we're at least a year behind, I would say, here in North Africa. But I would say America is still very, very weak. So I guess we're going to leave that here. If you made it this far of a rant video, hopefully it was entertaining and somewhat informative. How to correct this? Well, one, look into see if there's still any I don't know if you want to call them spamming events, but events that magnify the like there are some that magnify the resources, but events that magnify America's industrial, including refining ability, events that that are still in the files either for the AI or to look at, because I believe there were events like this back in 9 point whatever black ice, and resurrect them and make sure they're tagged for the human player. I think they're perfectly appropriate, because I think America should, because America in 1936 had the industrial power. Now, it would cause inflations, and we can talk about inflationary problems. We definitely can. Keynesianism works in the short term, if you understand politics. But Keynesianism in the long term is destructive. Now, and I know the Austrian economics groups, the sort of even more extreme Adam Smith types or whatever. TIK, love him, think he's a great YouTuber, good guy at analyzing and looking at history, does great research. He's definitely of the Austrian economic type, market forces. Where that falls down, and I think I don't know, I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but many of those people will agree at times, it's just not going to commercially be a success for a company to dig a Panama Canal. Or this is the Suez, I know, boy. But I was thinking of the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. Panama is much harder to do than the Suez. But, and the French company that starts and does this fails and the British take over. Because the eventual return on investment can be generations out. And can also be very, very, very risky, because if you build your Panama Canal, a private company, or your Suez Canal, but either one of them, or your Kiel Canal, or some of the canals in Britain, you build it, especially like the Panama or the Suez. Who says you'll be able to reap the rewards of the fruit of your labors? Because there could be a war, and somebody could take that territory over, or it gets destroyed, or a government nationalizes it, or like the early canals in Britain, and narrowboat canals all over Britain. Railroads come along, and replace it. And the Spey River Bridge across here that they eventually build, it's there now, but yeah, okay, a big huge bridge, you're going to charge a toll to come across it. Well, it's going to take a huge amount of time for that to the toll to pay off, and maybe technology will go on that somebody will build a cheaper one next to it. So sometimes governments are needed to do priming the pump, if you will, sort of the Keynesian idea, with some, and warfare equipment is all Keynesian economics, because sure, the rifle that the soldier carries is actually a profitable tool if you measure it against, it protects the industry that exists, so somebody else doesn't come and steal your industry. But that rifle, unless you're robbing banks with it or something, is not generating income. Okay, it's for a nation. It's not generating income unless, I guess, they're being sent off as mercenaries, and the pay is good enough that it makes sending off the mercenaries worthy. So they don't generate income, but they're necessary to protect from a government's point of view, your tax base, so that no one invades and takes away your goodies that you're taxing. And from a company that's paying for the taxes, or individuals or whatever, it's good because it's protecting you from the barbarians or just the French or whoever, looking at Britain here, whoever might come and take some of your goodies away. So it is a ultimately a it's like putting security alarms and security measures and a security guard on a like a warehouse or a train yard that's moving cargo that stops theft. Okay, and so we could look at, oh well, we had no security, no fences, no locks, nobody there at night, and we had 10% of our goods at that warehouse stolen every night. Oh well, we put locks on it and we get security guards. We no longer have anything stolen, or it's very rare, anything gets stolen. So you could measure that certain levels of security will protect your goods and assets, and so it's it's like building a building to keep the rain off of your stored goods. So we can see that it's good, but it's Keynesian in, say, unlike a billing and accounting department, it's collecting the money for the business. I mean, it doesn't make money as in that it isn't doing a service for somebody else, unless it's a billing company. It isn't doing a service for somebody else that has an income, or it isn't making a product or something that is an income, but it's the essential. It's paying, it's doing the wages for the workers, it's paying for whatever resources the company needs, and of course it's collecting and managing the incoming money that's you're making. So it's a necessary function tool that allows business to function. Okay, armies, navies, whatever, are a Keynesian economic operation means, in that you put money into the system, the government puts money into the system, and it produces something that won't make a profit. I mean, it may make a profit for the company making the guns, but it's something that generally doesn't generate profit for the government, because we're talking about the putting money as in the government buying these things, causing them to be made. So they're not making the government any money, and they're generally going to somebody who's just costing the government money, meaning the soldier or the sailor, and you're having to feed it. So armies, this whole war is Keynesian economics. And Keynesian economics can really boost up a system. But the more it does so, the longer it does so, the more negative effects it has. And this is why it was finally under John F. Kennedy, the American president who was assassinated, finally reduces down the income tax levels from sort of World War II levels, finally at that point. And it is and paying off all of those war bonds are damaging to the economy, and it's a miracle that America did so well after World War II, even with those high tax levels and all of that stuff done. And it was I know some people, especially some people who have limited English skills. Sorry, and you got more skills in English than I do in your native language probably, but America is the only major country to have won in World War II. Oh, but China had so many more dead people, or Russia. I'm not talking about. And they had a major effect on winning the war. But as in, players of a game, the people who win are the Americans. Yes, there's a bunch of Americans dead, but there isn't a lost generation like there was in Europe, particularly for people of World War I. America comes out of the war the winner of the war, not like who bled the most or who contributed the most to the defeating the enemies. No, I'm not talking about that, but who's the winner? Because Britain and France, yes. Are you going to call France a winner? It was on the winning side. Well, it was occupied and destroyed. Britain was bombed to hell and lost its colonies and all this other costs. It didn't win in the war. It was on the winning side, and it would, it survived Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan. Well, Imperial Japan sort of a little bit survived, but mostly not. They got occupied and everything else. And fascist Italy, they were destroyed. So, and the Soviet Union survived. It didn't, it didn't come out of the war better than it was when it went into it. The U.S., I would argue, and then we could talk maybe about Canada, or which is just a specific area, or somewhere, or Mexico might have, once it enters the war, because of the war and U.S. buying of things and whatnot, it might have seen an economic uplift, and Canada might have well. But of the major players, America is the only one that is better off after World War II than before, even with all of the life lost, even with all of the expenses to pay for the war that went through. America is the one that, of the major players, won the war. They won. And hey, we captured Werner von Braun and all of that scientific knowledge, and we got rockets to the moon because of that. We won. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We did all of that because of, I say we, well, I wasn't around then. My grandparents were, very much so. So yeah. And so Keynesian economics will be damaging, but the U.S. could have, if they realized and had a political consensus among the population that the world's going to, 1936, I'm saying, the world is going to explode in 4 years or slightly less. If we don't get our asses moving, we might get run over by the world. So let's go. And they could have started to do what Germany was trying to do in 1936, and start ramping up the war industry. They really could have. They could have, there was lots of labor, lots of, ability to do things. Hell, they built, during this time, they built the Hoover Dam. I know I've talked about it. That right there, that dam. It was 110 degrees and even hotter down here, and they were building this thing, and their hard hats. They started. I think it was maybe this project that really sort of starts hard hats. Now, hard hats are just your floppy, your floppy fedora type hat, dipped in like a tar. So it ain't going to help a lot. Help a little bit. Not like they're proper, either plastic, hard impact plastic, or metal hard hats. They're just, whatever, and they're building this, and they're living not that far away in atrocious conditions. Yeah, then that's a Keynesian project, because that's a government project, and it's the water level's probably right down about here right now, and it's running out of ability to create power pretty soon. We're having a drought long-term situation here, but this is a government, again, this to generate electricity, but it's also Keynesian in that it's giving jobs, because these guys were rather well paid, and it's why the prostitution is not illegal in the state of Nevada. Most states have state laws against, the whole state is against prostitution. There is no state law against prostitution in the state of Nevada, but the government and the people, the running down here for making the Hoover Dam, require basically, and the local government follows suit, because yes, we want the dam built, but basically require this county down here to pass anti-prostitution laws. That's why all the legal brothels are out here in the desert, way away from Las Vegas, because down here they didn't want a bunch of whorehouses showing up to drain the workers of their money. They could drain it for buying beer or whatever, but not prostitution. So that's why there is no prostitution in Las Vegas. And the only reason Las Vegas gets to exist is because of that dam, because of one, water they get from it, and two, the power generated by it. All the electric lights that are overdone there is because of the dam. If the dam doesn't exist, not that there would be this sleepy town, I mean, or a sleepy city, if you will, of Las Vegas out there, because it just sort of geographically sort of kind of would exist because it's a through area, but yeah, there ain't much there to want to live there, even without, you know, enough to be something. But up here, was Carson City, but Lake Tahoe. And Carson City, it was the big mining area, but Tahoe is, I think it's up here, is a city both partially in California, partially in Nevada. Most of it's in Nevada because gambling and whatnot is on the it's either because Lake Tahoe, I forget whether it's on the north or south side, but it's up here of the lake. But that's a nice little city in the mountains. You know, in the Rocky Mountains, high elevation, not deserts, pine trees and greenness and all that up there. That would be much more populous, but there isn't enough reason to be up there a lot. So, so Keynesianism, you know, so you can't forever run on Keynesianism without hitting that wall and crashing. Unlike what people want to do. Now, you can continuously do some Keynesianism so long as it isn't like, you know, you can't forever build rifles and boots. You have to have a civilian economy functioning. You can always have an army going, so you always have some Keynesianism going, but you can't, you know, run full Keynesian economy all time forever and not hit that eventual wall of inflation and collapse and other things. I know Keynesianists people will disagree with me, but no, it will eventually collapse. And so pure marketism, whether you want to call it capitalism or free market capitalism or whatever, but purely relying upon the market to determine things for everything is not a viable option. You don't like, you know, Renaissance Italy. I need an army. Okay, how much will you charge for me hiring your battalion of, you know, Langsknechts or, you know, or Genovese crossbowmen or, you know, or whatever, you know, what is it going to, you know, hire up an army? Well, you need a standing army always, so, but you may, you know, try to hire up, you know, mercenaries when you're getting ready to go to war, but the other side, if they got money, they'll, you know, the other side will try to buy them. And even if they have a reputation of not switching sides once the war happens, fine, but if one side sort of thinks they're getting ready to go to war, they can hire up all the good mercenaries, and all you got are either junk mercenaries or no mercenaries. So yeah, we're not going to, like, you know, have private battalions that the U.S. is going to just hire to defend itself. Sure, it might hire private battalions to whether to fight in the war or more modernly just do military level security operations, or like the Wagner Group in Russia or Black Hawk, whatever, not Black Rock because that's a different thing. In America, you might hire them for expeditionary type of things, and you may be like Britain, I'm just thinking is doing this, you know, with Nepal hiring the Gurkhas long term, and India still hires Nepalese Gurkhas operating still to this day as well. Yeah, you might hire some long-standing mercenaries, and you might hire, you know, some on again, off again, expand, contract, whatever mercenary type things for various expeditionary armies, expeditionary forces, instead of using national forces, you know, sort of like the French Foreign Legion, certainly as an auxiliary, as an addition, as something else. But so, you know, Keynesianism has a place. It's a limited place. It can be a total war situation, but eventually you will collapse. Now, the whole point of a total war situation is if you're both equally capable of fighting wars and designing weapons, shall we say. And I would say Germany in World War I was more or less equally capable to Britain, France, or America on like an individual battalion or soldier or division type basis. And the generals were more or less equally capable of each other, meaning smart enough to fight. I mean, they had problems. We can talk about that. And that's on all the sides. But they're equally capable. It comes down to exhaustion of Keynesianism, if you will, is Germany gets exhausted, starving, literally starving, trying to, with its big land grab in the east, with Russia exiting the war and deciding on civil war instead of war with Germany. How did that go for the people? Not so well, long term. But yeah, so it just, Germany, it exhausts first before the Western Allies. Now, if it was, I would say, very likely, if it was just France and its resources, not able to buy from America, buy from England, or buy from anywhere else, because in Germany, not able to buy from anywhere else, I think Germany would have defeated France just in the sort of Keynesian economics, as well as Keynesian economics of dying in the front lines. But even if they both got sort of very smart and got to where they weren't, and towards the end they were getting smarter and smarter about using troops, and they weren't nearly as futilistic attacks or defenses or whatever, but getting smart. Yeah, Germany's going to eventually out Keynesian France. But like I say, if you add in America and you add in Britain, and of course, you also have Austria and Turkey on Germany's side, but you add in Italy and then Russia, but then Russia leaves. Yeah, so you add in all the rest of it, they're able to out Keynesian Germany. And, you end up that. But America could have started Keynesianism, or if you will, started ramping up its war production in 1936. It does not. It really only starts doing that in 1939, and that's late in 39. As the war expands here, it's really only doing it then. You might be able to argue here and there, but it's just ever so small. Buying a few extra tanks or aircraft, or putting a few extra ships in production, or whatever it is. It really isn't ramping up anything serious. It's more just continuing to fiddle around the edges. And that's fine. And that's the way I expected it to be, because I don't want, because of the political realities of America at the time, for multiple reasons, not just anti-war or pro or against different ideologies or whatever, getting ready to fight in, or currently like fighting in Spain, but lots of political reasons. In America, they just weren't going to do this, and it wasn't something that was a practical thing to do. So you should not have unlimited ICs for America. And what the one thing that there was a consensus on in American politics, I don't know how much it was down on the street level of America, but on American politics in both left and right, in coastal and interior, whatever, was that the Navy protected the nation. So that's where you do find things like the Brooklyn class cruisers being built in the mid 30s under the, keeping under the treaty limitations. But you're building modern warships before the big outbreak, because they that's what's even if there is no war right away, these ships are thought to we'll have them around for 20 years, 30 years, so whether there's war now, war later, or no war, we want to be ready for war and have some fleets around to protect us. That was a national consensus. And and so some of that stuff is realistic. So that's that. So sorry, I guess no gameplay, just ranting and pontificating. Hopefully it was fun, hopefully interesting. Again, I know I already sort of tried to close this out before, but this will be the end of the episode. We will continue some more of this. I don't know how much. If you want this series to continue, rewatch, without sound on and maybe the screen minimized, just so the YouTube algorithm rewatch this series, because it's that which gets watched most gets made more of, if you will, because I got to deal with the YouTube gods of algorithm here. So thanks everyone. See you next time.